Hi, Alan. You know what? I get a lot of questions and emails into me here regarding disability allowance. Some people find it so complicated, and other people who do go through the procedures still find it even complicated to get the right answers. So I just wanted for a few moments today just to speak about this. So allowance in Ireland in 2022, how much is that per week?
At the moment, it's 208 a week and it's paid by the Department of Social Protection. So it's a weekly payment to your child. So it's generally what happens is, you have your domiciliary and your child turns 16. From the age of 16, then your child can apply for their own payment, which is that disability allowance. But the big core thing that you need to be kind of aware is disability allowance is actually means tested. So if you remember, the domiciliary was more based on substantial care. As a parent, you provide substantial care. And if the department agreed on that, they paid you your $309.50 per month. But at 16, even while your child's at school, they can apply for their disability allowance. And that's slightly different. That's more based on your child on not likely to be able to work for more than a year, and obviously passing the kind of means testing on that. And the other part of that as well, parents' income is not taken into consideration. The means testing is all on your child.
Okay, so if people have domiciliary care, do they automatically get disability allowance?
No, you have to apply for it. It can be very frustrating. I know parents often get really upset when they be saying, look, nothing's changed. Why am I going through this? But unfortunately, they have to start the whole process again. So again, the transition period isn't automatic. You have to download the form, you have to fill it in, send it off to the department, let them assess it. And obviously then if you're granted, then as I said, then you get your 208 a week. And the other thing, it's very important as well, not only does your child get they're like 208 a week, but they also then get their additional stuff, like they're allowed to keep their medical card, the one that they would have had with the domiciliary. They're allowed to keep that, but again, you have to fill in the medical card application. You can get a travel pass, a companion section, and if nobody's claiming the household benefit package, they can also get the household benefit package, which is €35 off either your gas or electricity and a free TB license as well.
And is that so? That's the importance really, so for parents of getting that disability allowance, isn't it? So they get all that extra with it.
Yeah, so it's not only like, obviously, your child will have a restricted ability to earn income. So one, it's obviously so important that they have some element of income coming in on a regular basis to, offset some of the expenses that they're going through. And the other aspect is one, from a parent's perspective, if you're getting carers allowance, incapacity child type, again, your child needs to have the disability allowance for you to kind of continue to be claiming these things as well, because obviously it'll show a need and it'll show, that you meet the criteria as well.
Okay, so how do parents start this process to claim like the disability allowance form?
Well, first of all, you can contact the department, as information will send it out, or get onto ourselves, we'll just send you out the form. So first of all, have a look at the form. It is quite a big form. So starting on that part, the other aspects you got to really think about is what's the criteria here. So they're not asking, what's your child diagnosis, it's really how that impacts their access to work. So how would that, so you've got to really put your thinking cap on, so again, you're trying to think of, does my child have social issues, anxiety, stuff that would prevent them from being in the workplace, stuff that would prevent them from kind of, would they have issues in feeding, dressing, clothes, all that whole area. So as much information as you can gather to show that your child would have an issue, because what you're trying to do is prove that at 16 years of age, they wouldn't be able to have hold down a job. And people all say, but that's ridiculous. Nobody is 16, but no, kids at 16 might be working in bars or might be working, part-time. So again, you're just trying to come up with as much proof. So just think hard. Is there mobility issues? Is there any stuff that impacts their access to work? And if you can gather as much of that and send it in, then of course that will make it so much easier.
And does your doctor have to sign this form?
Yeah, there's a section for your GP to fill in. So again, now they can sign, just put in their part. If you can get the support of your GP or even speech therapist or OT or any person that your child is dealing with, this is again more powerful because now you have professions backing you up. And it's not that you want them to write, I support John Murphy's application. What you want them to be saying is, because of John's condition or Mary's condition, because of this, I support the application because I don't believe that they would be able to, or they can then expand on that. So again, it's no good getting a letter saying, yes, I support it. It's why they support it, what the doctor, what the OT, or what those professionals see. That's the most important part.
So you're just saying now for me as a parent that no matter what savings I have, it's not going to implicate this whatsoever because this is on David. So what would
Exactly.
have happened if David had savings, say from communion, confirmation, birthdays? What would happen then in that scenario then,
That
Allan?
now is, yeah. So that's will be taken into consideration for the application. Now, don't worry too much straight away because the means on is quite generous in the sense that they would potentially have up to 50,000, which is an incredible amount of money. So a lot of kids never meet that. But what I often like, only the other day now, a social worker rang me, and he rang me on the special needs bank account, and he was saying, "Oh, we have a family here, and they're not spending any money, so it's built up because it's over 10,000 a year came in. So what they were having was 30,000." And I just mentioned to him, I said, I'd be very cautious now because the medical card is 36,000, and I'm not too sure what else that other child is applying for, but you'd have to be very careful not to be going up. And he started to kind of argue with me, and I think he thought I was trying to be kind of, the department, and I was just trying to make him aware. But he was like, "Oh, that's the child's money themselves, that they just didn't spend it." And I was trying to, and I was like, "That's okay. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just telling you, be very careful. That no is all in the child's name, so therefore it will start to impact." So again, be very cautious, stay away from the limits. I always say to my family, 3,000-4,000, don't have anything building up more than that, because it'll keep the gate open for all the entitlements. But as you said, then the parents for all the world could be working away full time. They could be earning, there's no question on the application about your parents' income or your parents' assets. And of course, as we said, then if the parents want to continue to get the carers, then obviously that's a separate application, not impacting the disability allowance application.
Now I can get why you're saying how it's so hard for parents that if they have domiciliary care and the child has a serious, say, condition, just taking David, I'm only taking my son here, and then the carer, the disability allowance, is saying, "Oh, we don't know, can we give him this?" And they need all these reports again. And I get the frustration in parents that if your child's condition improved or he or she didn't have that condition, you'd be on the top of the roof shouting it. And I get that frustration. And with the disability allowance, say, can you get called then by an individual assessor to assess your child at any time as well?
Yeah, what I was explaining to that social worker is that anytime there's a change in your circumstances, you need to inform the department of that. And so that's one aspect to it. So that's the kind of rules out there. So again, if your savings did start building up, or if your ability to work and all that, so that's one aspect. But your question was slightly different. Your question was asking more.
It's just very embarrassing as parents if they're suffering with a child with a serious condition, and then you're called by the
Oh, for
board
a review.
for
Yeah,
a
sorry, my
review of
apologies.
your
That's right.
child. No, you're grand. And then you're going, if my child's condition changed, I would love to be telling
Yeah.
everybody.
But
And
that's
it's
as you
very
said, now
hard.
the reviews can happen at any stage. It could be randomly reviewed, or every so often, then they'll write out to say, right, we need to assess the situation again to make sure your child's means isn't over the limits, and obviously meet the criteria for disability allowance. And as you said, it is upsetting. And again, so this is why we say to parents as well, always just have a folder at home when you get up-to-date reports, when you get it, just keep it in the background. So when something like that comes, then it's not a case where you have to sit down with a blank page and start to kind of think of it all. You can then start pulling out reports, up-to-date kind of psychology stuff, anything to support. But reviews do happen on a regular basis.
To be honest, Allan, it's not just a folder they need, it's also a filing cabinet at this stage. By the time your child is as old as mine, like 27.
And the other thing, remember, we always say to parents, copy everything, photocopy, keep your log, send it in, register, post it in, because then obviously they have to acknowledge that they've received your application. So therefore, and the processing times are about 8 to 12 weeks is generally what we hear back from our families. It would take about 12 weeks. So again, about 4 months out, do get the application in, start to look at it, start to get it filled in, because the GP sections, particular GPs can be, I don't know if it's just more GPs, but we hear an awful lot of GPs now are under a lot of pressure. So it could take a couple of weeks to come back out of the GP office. So there, as I said, do prep for it to come and then send it all off, as I said. And even if you're missing some key parts of the information, do still send the application and put a note on to follow. Do get your application. Don't wait. Like if it's all holding up, don't be kind of 2-3 weeks before your child's birth is sending it off, because then you're certainly going to miss the date, where the disability allowance can be granted.
Yeah, I completely agree. But the other thing that I find quite frustrating, and I don't know how this is going to affect the disability allowance, we all look at our children's abilities as well, right? So David's happened to be memory and computer and phones, and that's his greatest ability. And you work on that as well as you work on helping, say, the disability, you work on the ability. So if David had a job where he would have the ability to work and make him feel important as he loves to feel, and everyone should feel that as well. If he did get a job then or worked a few hours a week, how would that impact his disability allowance, Allan?
Actually, so all that needs to happen then is that David will get a letter from his GP to support it, just rehabilitation type work. It's good for his mental health. So David then could start work, and he can work part-time. Now, there's no real restriction on the amount of hours, but on the income that he can maintain. So he could work away and earn up to, say, something like 140 a week and have no impact on his disability allowance. But again, the department needs to be informed of this. And then if he earned a bit more, say 140 to 350, he'd get a percentage of his disability allowance taken down. Do you know what I mean? So he mightn't get the full 208, he might get half or 3/4 or a quarter. And of course, then from over 350, then he certainly would lose, you know, his access to disability, because obviously now he's showing that he could hold down a full-time job. Now, I suppose an important thing to note as well is, as you talk about, that's so important. An awful lot of parents as well, when their child's around 16, talk to me and say, oh, I don't think I'll apply for it because I think it might restrict it. Nothing but applying for disability allowance while your child's in school will stop anything. It's not a case that it prevents them. If anything, I would kind of encourage for it could probably open access to kind of education, you know, supports in that side of it, or in the job side of it. Again, supports for the employer to take your child. So nothing prevents. So certainly do. And as I said, if David then, if he did get a job, fantastic. As you said, you'd be the first in there to say, good luck, goodbye. We don't need the disability allowance. He's now working, and then it'd be a fabulous kind of, you know, phone call to make. And again, they can come back and forth as well. So I know lots of my families, they have periods where their child might be well, you know, and then there might be other times where the child, so therefore that they could work for, and then they come, but once they're in the system, you know, it's easy for them to get back in, as opposed to never being in the system. And then at 25, they're trying to apply at that stage. And obviously that now is incredibly difficult, because they obviously want to know what's the backstory of all those years where they weren't getting to disability allowance.
And I get with parents, like, they don't veer on the side of caution with this, I feel. So I know parents who'd ring me and their children would be in a specialized school even, and yet they'd be saying to me, I'm sure he's still going to work and be okay. I'm sure it's just a phase, or it's just because of this or because of that, he's like this. And in actual fact, what you're saying is it's better to err on the side of caution.
Yeah, we don't know, and we're all hoping the same thing. As you said, now we are actually hoping, you know, wherever their education system, that they come out to the side and it all does work out. But again, it's easy enough to kind of step back. You know, it's like that thing we always say: plan, get everything in place, get the disability allowance, get it in, and if you don't need it down the road, that's fabulous. You know, and certainly, as I said, you know, but err inside a caution, you know, in the sense, don't try to go for your most optimistic view of everything and try to, you know, it's hard when you're, as a parent, you're in the middle of it all. It's very hard to assess it all. Whereas I said, the department won't be long telling you no, you know, this kind of, and I suppose that's another thing we need to mention. You might get a standard letter out saying, we've reviewed your application, it doesn't meet the criteria. You know, it's a kind of bog standard letter. Now, if you actually think your child does meet the criteria, it's now time to go back. No, not argue, but start to fight your case, to really start getting your stuff in line, really get your supports there, and go into a lot of depth then about how, you know, your child would need the disability allowance, why. So again, it's important to appeal it when you do get these kind of, because it comes out on a regular basis. And again, the other thing that's probably good as well is, if you're appealing it, then, you know, fill it all in and give it to, like, I don't know, a friend or somebody you know, and say, look at this totally independent. And if that doesn't really give that person a shock, you know, if you person really say, oh yeah, that's all right, you're probably not hitting the mark, because that's what you've got to kind of take somebody who's in a job that has to read this and really get it. Okay, this person deserves disability allowance. You know, this person, you know, they almost feel like, you know what, I won't turn them down because I actually see now clearly demonstrated why this child should get the disability allowance.
Yeah, I understand. And Allan, do you think the money then should be paid into, a joint account with the parents, or do you think where should it be paid into?
Okay, so when it gets paid, it has to be paid into your child's name or collected at post office. Now, an awful lot of families kind of collect at post office that way. I always encourage our families just to start putting it into the bank account, get it automating in the sense that get it all working smoothly, that it comes in on a regular basis, and it's not something that could, you know, if your child isn't well or all this kind of stuff. So now when it's getting paid, get it paid into the child's special needs bank account. So open up the special needs bank account, get it paid into their name. It goes directly in there, and from there then manage it. Now you do got to use it in the sense that, like that social care worker was saying that the person has built up 30,000. Now obviously the parents thought they were doing well, not spending a penny of the child's money, but that 30,000 would be more beneficial building up at the parent's name and held for them for later, you know, as opposed to building up in the child's name. And now obviously starting to impact, we say, future access to things. So certainly get the card, use the card, you know. Parents often have been saying, look, get them to contribute to family upkeep. And parents kind of get shocked. They were like, oh, I couldn't, just my child. And I'd be saying, but you're doing them a favor. Get them to contribute to family upkeep, keep their account down. If you can put money away, do the trust life funds, do all, that's fabulous. You know, do that on the other side, you know, but to benefit your child, it's not going to do many benefit, just this money building up straight into their account.
Their account. And is there disability allowance payment dates in 2022?
Well, it kind of gets paid on the Wednesday and you get kind of paid a week beforehand. But I suppose what parents have to realize as well, that'll get paid. And once you get over the hurdle of sorting it, it settles. Other than reviews, it settles. And actually what happens then, once your child reaches the age of 66, which is a long time down the road, they'll continue to get their disability allowance and what we talked about, all the other entitlements. And at 66, then it'll transition into the state pension. And that stage, then they can move on to a state pension from 66 onwards.
Okay, and what do you know the amount of that state pension then for children?
At the moment, I think the state, it's a non-contribution thing. So again, you caught me there. I think it's about €236 or something. So it's slightly less than the actual contribution, the pension contribution that you get from working. So it's slightly less than that. But again, it's a transition period.
I think as parents, like I was dying to get David to primary school, and then hopefully he'd make it to his communion, and then secondary and confirmation. 21 then is a huge thing, you know, you would be thinking of, and you'd never think really further afield, you know, you're just so grateful for everything you have. Is there a waiting time for parents now with the disability allowance, Allan?
As I said earlier, I'd say 8 to 12 weeks. So that's the kind of mark that I would say to parents to get it all together and send it off. And if they need any other information, again, to come on to us. Again, we do have kind of other videos, there's links we have as well, you know, how to fill in the application. So again, if people are, you know, need any more supports and stuff, do come back to us and we can kind of help them out in that.
And I just have 2 quick questions there. So what if parents get turned down for the disability allowance?
The appeal side of it, again, you know, as I mentioned earlier, just go through the whole process, start it all, but really gather your information on that side.
And appeal it. Would you recommend every parent to appeal it?
If you believe, if you think your case, you know, I mean, you think your child wouldn't, you know your child better than anybody. And if you thought, you know, could my child really work in the bar now? Could my child really work as a waitress, or could they work in industry or work, you know? And if you felt, you know what, actually, there's no chance of this. You know, even though you would hope it may be in their 20s that they may, you know, certainly I would say you've got to kind of go down that road.
And just the last question: do you think the disability allowance is enough for a child or a person to live on? A young adult to live on?
Yeah, 208 a week. It's like, no, I'd say it's gone up. It was about 188 a week there about 4 or 5 years ago, so it goes up slightly. But often parents will say to me, oh, actually it's starting to build up, you know, that kind of, others just use it all. And you kind of, but what you've got to realize then, parents are covering the gas, the electricity, they're paying for everything, shoes, you know, clothes, Christmas, hot, you know, this kind of, so 208 to live on.
You couldn't live on it independently.
Oh, it's poverty. It's poverty.
You couldn't live on independently. You couldn't make a child independent living with that amount.
And even worse then is that a lot of the residential providers, we say if they were in shared communities and all that, they'd end up taking a long stay charge off the disability allowance. So they wouldn't even get their 208 a week. They might get a half or 3/4 of it, or even less, you know, because they'd have to contribute to the upkeep of the residential providers. So again, we're talking about, you know, shocking, you know, 208 sounds kind of like, you know, when a child turns 60, But the reality of it's not very, this is where we keep coming back to funding trusts and getting more assets and money there from, so that obviously when the parents aren't around, there's something substantial to really make a difference, because as I said, 208 won't, when their child is on their own, won't really last very long.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking of David now again. He's fine here with me. That's not a problem, and we work it all. But if David was in a residential care, that I would hope would be lovely, and him is happy, and all, like, not like a homes or some places I've seen. I mean, some place where he is happy, he still won't be happy if he hasn't got his laptop, his mobile phone, which has to be, well, it's easy for him to use the one he has, and that's expensive. He loves his Now TV because of his hearing loss. He loves watching matches as such and things like that. But that's a daily living for Dave. That's not like his swimming or his socializing.
But I mean, it's not a field that it's an extension. It's actually a kind of Sky Sports, like, is part of his, that's part of his day-to-day.
Yeah, if David's SIM card is down, you would see a psychological problem with David that people would never have seen or know. And I'm presuming it's the same for a lot of other parents out there. But they're just things we take for granted now. But if it was in a setting where he was paying extra for these, that's on a daily basis, that Dave would get very frustrated, I know. So lots to think about, Alan.
It is.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Alan.
Okay, we'll talk soon. Bye now.